I welcome everyone to the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association meeting for the month of September, a special day rather than our normal third Wednesday of the month. But for October, we'll be back to our third Wednesday of the month. So I'd first like to have the Board of Directors introduce themselves. We'll start with Jules.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jules Spear. I'm Vice President of the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association and Honorary Mayor of Sherman Oaks.
Okay. And Jules, are we having a toy drive this December?
Yes, we are. It will be taking place on December the 5th. That's a Sunday at our usual place, which is Gelson's Market in Sherman Oaks on Van Nuys Boulevard.
And who gets the gifts? Who gets the toys?
Well, I get them all. I keep them all, actually. No, I'm only kidding. The gifts, the toys go to the Department of Children and Family Services. They are there with their vehicles and they will pick it up and they distribute it to the children that are under their care. We've been doing this for a number of years and it's been quite successful.
Okay. John?
John's not on, Richard.
Okay. Maria?
Hi, good evening. I'm Maria Calvin. I am the chair of the Legislative Committee for the association.
And we'll be hearing from you shortly. Marshall?
Marshall Long, I chair of the Land Use Committee.
Okay, we hear some background.
We're getting a little background noise from somebody.
Could be embarrassing to whoever. I suggest you mute.
Bob here.
Okay. And Jay?
Hi, I'm Jay Weitzler. I'm secretary of the organization, and along with Jules, the liaison to the Buckley School.
And what about the Federation of Hillside and Canyon Association?
And the Hillside Federation.
And what do they do? We're a member of the Hillside Federation, but what do they do?
The Hillside Federation is a group of about 60 different organizations that are really surrounding the Santa Monica Mountains area. And we're very concerned, as part of Sherman Oaks is, of course, very concerned about building conditions, fire conditions, safety conditions, open for animals, open range, open areas, and want to make sure that those things are protected against the legislation that is continually coming down by those people 400 miles away from us.
Okay, thank you. So our first speaker is the mayor of Redondo Beach, Bill Brand, who will explain an initiative measure that's important to all of us. And he'll explain why it's needed and why it's going to win and when it's going to start. With that, Bill?
Thank you very much, Richard. Yeah, everyone has seen these housing bills come down from Sacramento. They're eliminating local control of our local zoning and development. And it's just been getting worse. It's been building. There's been over 50 housing bills passed in the last few years that strip our ability to control our own towns. So we formed a group. We started the initiative really over 3 years ago, and we have filed it finally that amends the state constitution to make zoning and land use municipal affairs so that, you know, we can control our own towns. We have 5 proponents. There's myself. It's a very bipartisan group, by the way. It's myself. It's Mayor of Yorba Linda, Peggy Wong. It's Dennis Richards. He's a former planning commissioner of the city of San Francisco and county. There's Jovita Mendoza, who's from the city of Brentwood in Northern California. There's a Brentwood in the East Bay area. And lastly is John Heath. John Heath, who's a local attorney here with United Homeowners Association. So many of you are been experiencing what's been happening in Sacramento, and the local electeds and local associations such as this are finally starting to push back, because it really is about affordable housing. It's not so much a housing shortage as it is just affordable housing. And we see what Sacramento is doing is really nothing for affordable housing, but in fact squeezing it out by cramming these market rate mandates on local communities with really no way for us to meet the impacts that are coming our way, like schools, roads, public safety, residential development just doesn't pay. And we all have our own different, in other words, it costs more for a city to maintain the impacts created by residential than the revenue we get in from residential property taxes. So it's a big lift, there's no question about it, but we've been advocating for years. It has not worked. And if we do nothing, we really will be unable to control what happens in our own towns. So again, this is an amendment to the state constitution. It's Article 11, right? Section 4, Section 5, and Section 7 for you wonks who want to go look at it. And it's a shift of power, folks. It's not legislation per se. It's a shift of power from Sacramento back to the local communities. It was an assembly bill. Our local assembly member, Al Suchi, liked it so much he introduced it as a bill. It was co-authored by State Senator Stephen Glazier from the Bay Area. Of course, Sacramento's not going to hear it. And so we've turned it into a citizen-led initiative. And you can read more about it at communitiesforchoice.org, communitiesforchoice.org. It's called Californians for Community Planning Initiative. We're shooting for the November 2022 ballot, and that's why we just filed it in August 25th, so that we had time to get it on that ballot and get the signatures. We're in a big, is that it?
That's it.
Okay, question, when should it be available to the public to start signing and soliciting signatures?
We don't have that exact date yet. It'll probably be sometime November, December, and we have a lot of money to raise before that. So that's our goal right now is fundraising.
Okay, Mayor, thank you very much. We look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Sure. Thank you very
Okay.
much for the time. Appreciate it.
Okay. Next up is Alex, who is the field deputy for our councilwoman, Nithya Raman. Alex, update.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Nassif. I am your Sherman Oaks Field Deputy for the Office of Council Member Nithya Raman. Last week, we did a business walk with Council Member Raman. We visited a few businesses along Ventura Boulevard and Van Nuys Boulevard. Thank you so much to Fran and Tammy at the Chamber of Commerce and Leslie and Kathleen at the Sherman Oaks Bid who accompanied us on this walk. We learned a lot from our business owners as far as the struggles that they're having. One in particular, obviously homelessness, trash related issues, crime. So we are looking to our local nonprofit organizations to figure out how we can strengthen those relationships to support our businesses and support the chamber. Please save the date for October 9th for our district-wide Tom LaBonge Day of Service. In honor of our previous CD4 council member, Tom LaBonge, we will be hosting a cleanup in a part of our district, which the location is TBD, but please feel free to reach out to me for an update on that. As a few vaccination updates, so our LAUSD schools are back in person. Each LAUSD school has their own individual COVID-19 report card, which you can find at lausd.net. They are also offering vaccinations at some of their school sites, which you can find on their school website as well. And please feel free to reach out to me for more information. If you or anyone you know are homebound, you can request an in-home vaccination or a ride, a free ride through Uber or Lyft by contacting our LA County Department of Public Health Vaccine Call Center. The Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance is launching its Cool Blocks LA program. It is a 5-month, 9-meeting action-based program, which allows neighbors to direct a team of 5 to 8 households on their block to figure out. Oh, that's it. Oh, I had something more. Okay, everyone reach out to me. Is it okay that I put my contact information in the chat?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Beautiful. Okay, next, Ryan Hari from our Assemblyman's office.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone again. My name is Ryan, and I am the Sherman Oaks Field Representative for Assemblymember Adrin Nazarian in the 46th Assembly District. So a little update from our office. The Assembly is officially on recess, not recess, adjournment actually for the year. It adjourned last Friday, and we will return in January. So the Assembly member on September 10th voted on a number of bills before adjourning for the session. The Assembly member has 5 bills that are currently sitting on the governor's desk waiting for signature. 3 of them are relating to aging and healthcare. One of them has to do with rate reduction bonds, and one of the bills has to do with transportation. 4 of his bills are being made into 2-year bills, so they'll be considered in the next legislative cycle this upcoming January. They also primarily have to do with education and healthcare and aging. So the Assembly member will continue thinking about what bills he wants to introduce in January, especially as chair of the Long-Term Care and Aging Committee. And also as a member of the Budget Committee, making sure that the San Fernando Valley has all of its needs being addressed in Sacramento. Last month, we did have self-defense for the soul. This is our mental health resilience workshops that we have online. We are going to be doing them again in October. I don't have dates yet, but I'll go ahead and send them to Richard and Bob once I have them, so you all can know when we'll be doing them. They'll still be done over Zoom. One of those sections will be for mental health resilience, and then one of the sections will be for actual physical self-defense that we will be doing together over Zoom. It's still not safe for us to go in person, so this is the best that we'll have to do with this. Other than that, if folks need any assistance with any state agency, with the Franchise Tax Board, if you want to know where your stimulus check is, if you know anyone who needs help with unemployment, if you need to renew your driver's license but you have a question, please feel free to reach out to me. What I'm going to do is I'll leave my information in the chat. That way you can reach out to us, either call or email. And that is a little bit of what our office has been doing. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And a question, when does the session resume?
Session resumes in early January. And Richard, I just wanted to mention, thank you all again for having us at the meeting last month with SOHA. The Assembly member did end up voting no on both Senate Bills 9 and 10. They both are right now sitting on the governor's desk. We don't know if they'll be signed or vetoed. However, I do know that in the case that they are signed, I do know of some different initiatives that folks are working on to overturn them. So the Assembly member did oppose them this time around. He appreciated calling,
so
emailing.
Here's my question. If the Assemblyman doesn't go back to Sacramento until January, if someone wanted to meet with him, what would be the process?
Reach out to me. I'm more than happy to set up a meeting. If you want to talk about an issue or legislation, reach out to me directly and I'll go ahead and leave my information in the chat.
The audience can't see the chat, Ryan, so why don't you say your email out loud?
I'm going to change it to all panelists and attendees. Will they still see that if I do that, Bob?
I'll see it if you do that. That'll allow.
Okay, I'll do that then, Bob.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next is our Captain Charles Hearn. Are you?
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, Richard.
Hi. So if you could also introduce the SLOs that are with us.
I will.
Okay, thanks for having us. We have Officer Saldana and Officer Mariana Romo, who's due. Of course, many of you from Sherman Oaks are aware that we had some staffing difficulties. It was probably almost a year and a half that we weren't able to fill our senior lead officer position. So Officer Romo is coming to you from West Valley Division. She competed against some really top officers from all over the valley and was able to get the position. And I will mention that for an officer that's outside of the division to be able to come in and get a coveted position like senior lead officer, it speaks volumes to her integrity and work ethic. And she has done a fabulous job already. And I think it's been about 6 weeks or so, right, Officer Romo? Okay, so a tradition, Richard, in LAPD is what we call our 1 minute, 1 second. So Officer Romo, why don't you do that for the residents of Sherman Oaks?
Yes, hello. Thank you so much, Captain. Hello, everyone. Again, I am Senior Lead Officer Mariana Romo. Like my captain said, I've been here for about 8 weeks now. I do come from the West Valley Topanga area, and I am very excited to be part of this community and help you guys as much as I can. I would like to go over my crime stats very briefly. When it comes to aggravated assaults, we are down about 17%, which is a good thing. And also personal thefts and other thefts are down as well. What I do have is a slight increase on burglaries. And I have been working very, very closely with our burglary detectives, our neighborhood watch in that certain area, which is Van Nuys, Magnolia South, the 405 East to the LA River Wash North. Very, very closely with them, where we have had neighborhood watch meetings regarding it. I have also worked very closely with our volunteer coordinator, where he has organized special details with our volunteer community patrol and our surveillance teams, and they're working in that specific area. I would also like to remind everyone just some crime prevention tips to verify that all your doors are locked. I know we always think we lock them, but double check. Install bright lights throughout your perimeter of your residence. Criminals do not like to have bright lights on them, so do not give them that opportunity to break into your residence or for you to become a victim. Use an alarm system and video surveillance cameras. If you have a surveillance cameras, have something where you can get the alarm system to notify you that somebody is at your residence or there's some noise, that way we're there right away. And also another thing is leave a radio on at high volume. This makes burglars believe that someone is at home and they will leave the area and go to another place. That's something that I learned as a young child. Again, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. My email address is 40229@LAPD online, 40229@LAPD online. I encourage everyone to reach out to me and beef up our neighborhood watch meetings, because I cannot do this job without the relationship with the community I serve. So I'm very glad and happy and excited and motivated to work in the Sherman Oaks area.
What is your
Thank you very much.
geographic area?
My geographic area is Magnolia South, Fulton West, some parts of Ventura Boulevard to the 101 North, and the 405 East. So I have a very, very big area, but I am here and it's a challenge for me, but I'm happy to work that area. It's basically the northern part of Sherman Oaks. Yes.
Richard, I'd like to just take a moment too. Now, recently there has been some professional burglars that have hit up there in the northern part of Sherman Oaks. We call them the Chilean suspects. We're working in concert with specialist detectives from downtown headquarters in trying to apprehend these suspects. So just to elaborate on what Officer Romo said, make sure these suspects, they know to go into the master bedroom and look for safes, look for high-end handbags and jewelry. Okay, so if you keep your property in a safe, make sure it is a safe that is mounted into the ground, preferably. And know that if you keep it inside the master bedroom and in the closet, they're likely going to look for it right there. Okay, they get in and out really quickly. So try to keep your belongings someplace other than that. And definitely make sure it's a safe that is mounted and not just free flow in your closet. Okay, I'll go to Officer Saldana for also a crime update in the southern part of Sherman Oaks.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Captain Hearn. I'm Officer Saldana. I'm the southern portion of Sherman Oaks. I cover everything south of Ventura towards Mulholland, between Coldwater Canyon and Sepulveda. Yes, I had a little uptick on our BFMVs, burglary for motor vehicles. That's close to 8% from last year. This is a type of crime that can be prevented. It's a type of crime that, if you set up a routine every night before you go to bed, have your, remove your valuables from the vehicle, lock your vehicle doors, close your overhead garage, make sure your inner doors from your garage are also locked, turn on your exterior lights, and shut all your windows, and the most important thing, turn on your alarm on all the vehicles. It's very important. I mean, these leaving valuables in your car, these individuals will smash your window to remove these items. And like I said in prior meetings, most of these burglaries from motor vehicles are these individuals do go up and down these streets to check if the doors are locked or not. And so it's an opportunity type of crime, and it's something that could be prevented. So, remove all valuables and keep an eye with your neighbors.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here with us. Next is Maria Calvan, an update on SB 9 and 10. Before you give the update, if you can give the 1-minute version of sort of what those bills will do if enacted.
I will do that. So SB 9 allows anybody to split a lot, a single family lot, into two, and you can build 2 housing units on each lot. You can also just add a duplex to your property along with an ADU and a junior ADU. And we're saying that that is not going to happen with a homeowner because that's really expensive to do lot splitting, but it's perfect for developers. And SB 10 allows 10-unit apartment buildings in single family neighborhoods if your city council allows it.
And both bills, no, I'm sorry, 9 passed.
Both
Correct.
passed. Both
That's
have
right.
passed.
Right,
And-
but both passed. And where are they now and what can we do?
Okay, so they're both sitting at the desk of the governor waiting for signature. Lots of organizations, lots of cities, and lots of individuals have reached out to try and get him to veto these bills with reasons on why these are not productive bills. They don't offer affordable housing. But we think these bills will get signed because they are strongly financed and supported by big tech and the real estate industry, who are major backers of the governor. So we think that's going to happen. We have.
So we just, I think you made a mistake. Are you telling the public that there is no affordable housing requirement in these bills? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I am saying, Richard. There is no affordable housing on this. It is the major problem we're facing. It is why these bills were introduced, because they claim it's a statewide problem, but the bills do not offer affordable housing. That's why it's so crazy. And it's why we have mounted such an opposition, and cities all over the state have mounted an opposition. These are crazy bills that really open up neighborhoods just for higher development, and they're all going to be market rate. And our communities of color that have cheaper land are very vulnerable to these bills because they will be gentrified, and all neighborhoods will be affected by this. And there's no infrastructure requirements to upgrade. They're giving developers the right to do whatever they want in each of our cities. So
Okay.
can I have a couple more minutes?
Sure.
Great. I just wanted to say that the affordable housing problem is a global problem, and countries around the world understand that this housing crisis has been exacerbated by huge investment firms buying up single family neighborhoods. So these firms are investing billions of dollars to purchase single family homes because of the huge return on investment they provide. And some countries have actually passed laws to prevent foreign investors from buying single family. But California is actually making it easier for these companies to flourish here in California. So we have to fight this. We all have to get involved because we have a lot to lose, because next year there's going to be more bills that keep breaking us away from our communities and preventing us from doing anything in our communities. The state is taking over. So we're helping build brand with our outreach, and we have going to start approaching Hertzberg again and trying to see if we can get some legislation that could temper these and also introduce ideas on affordable housing and how to do it correctly.
Thank you. Next up is Bob Anderson.
Hi, everybody. This is Bob Anderson. Tonight, I want to talk a little bit about redistricting. There's several redistricting efforts going on in the state, but the one I'm going to focus on is the city council. And this only happens once every 10 years, and it sort of happens abruptly, and then it sort of ends abruptly. And I just wanted to tell you, last night, I attended a meeting for 3 hours where the commissioners finally went over what their thoughts are on how they might redistrict. And there's good news and bad news. The good news is we've told them that we want one district from the valley over to the west side, over the hill somewhere. And they agree with that, and they're going to try to do it. We also told them they should treat the valley fairly because they didn't last time. And they have said they're going to do fair balancing this time. So that's all the good news. The bad news is it's all very confused right now. We have asked to join with Encino and Tarzana to be in a new council District 5, but I tell you folks, people are drawing maps and sending them into the commission on redistricting software, and there's probably 1,000 maps that have been submitted, and it's a little muddled right now. But here's the interesting news. The commission will draw its first set of maps publicly for the public to watch them draw it Monday and Tuesday. And a week later, they'll send them out and everybody can look at them. And you've got another week or week and a half to make comments. And then they finalize them. They go to the city council. And once they approve them and make changes, we have new districts. We could be in a totally new district. It's very interesting. So,
Jules?
Excuse me, Jules, could you please mute? And it's a big deal. They are talking about moving districts all over the place, maybe joining us with Studio City, maybe joining us with Encino, maybe Tarzana, maybe Toluca Lake again, maybe Hollywood, maybe Brentwood. It's all up in the air, but we're working to protect it and get the best job we can. So if you want to send a comment, you can look up our maps on the website, soha914.com. You can see what we've recommended, and you can send an email to redistricting.lacity@lacity.org and tell them what you want. So with that, Richard, I think that's where we are.
Thank you very much. And we will have more information in the upcoming newsletter for October. Okay, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, who is new to his position. He's Deputy Chief Alan Hamilton. He is in charge of all of the officers in the San Fernando Valley. And we want to hear from him, find out what his goals are. And then we're going to have a lot of questions by Jay Weitzler. Deputy Chief Hamilton, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Richard. And thank you for having me tonight. I think some of you here have known me for quite a while. My relationship with Sherman Oaks as a member of the Los Angeles Police Department actually started on August 7th, 1991, which is when I transferred to Van Nuys Division from Hollenbeck Division as a brand new police officer too. I've worked Van Nuys Division for a number of years. I'm very familiar with the area as I've worked all along the southern part of the San Fernando Valley. I've worked North Hollywood, Van Nuys Division, West Valley, and Topanga area. So I'm very familiar, but my heart always goes back to Sherman Oaks. When I was a young officer, my best friend actually moved to Sherman Oaks and lived out here for a number of years. So I'm very familiar with Sherman Oaks. I've got a little bit of an affinity. It's one of my favorite areas of the Valley. I've got 31 and a half years on the Los Angeles Police Department. I've worked half of my career in the Valley. I've worked the other half over the hill, as it's often said, citywide, and I've had a number of different commands and assignments, ranging from investigations for everything, including homicides, gang investigations, etc. I've had different vice assignments. I worked vice as an officer in Van Nuys, and I was a supervisor in vice in Hollywood. And quite often our Hollywood investigations would lead back to the Sepulveda corridor. If you're familiar with kind of how the Sepulveda corridor used to be on the edge of Sherman Oaks on the far west side, I worked very hard throughout the years to try and limit that conspicuous street walking prostitution activity. Back years ago, I worked very closely with Tom LaBonge, who was a dear friend of mine for years, and the council to introduce legislation to seize vehicles that were being used for prostitution along the Sepulveda corridor and in the Hollywood area. So, I've got an affinity for reducing crime, especially visible street walking crime. And, it really runs the gamut, my efforts from working a citywide burglary task force for a number of years to focusing on the knock-knock burglars that were here years ago when I was assigned to North Hollywood Division. Some of you may have seen years ago where knock-knock burglaries became very prevalent along the hillsides on both sides of the Santa Monica Mountains. But Sherman Oaks was particularly hard hit with a lot of the high-end burglaries that were occurring back in the 2000s. I led that task force, resulting in the arrest of 57 suspects, the recovery of millions of dollars worth of property, and some very long prison sentences for some prolific burglars that were preying on the Valley communities. So I've got a really big connection with not only the Valley, but with Sherman Oaks in particular. And we are doing a lot of new things to address a lot of the problems, some of the age-old problems in the Sherman Oaks area and the San Fernando Valley, and also some of the newer issues, with homelessness obviously being one of the major new issues. We do have a responsibility for the criminal homeless population. However, as Ed has been said, with both our chief and many other members of our department, the Los Angeles Police Department cannot be the solution to the unsheltered problem. We absolutely 100% have a role to play in making sure that laws are followed and that the community is safe. But if society's lead agency is law enforcement in addressing the homeless problem, society has some major issues that need to be resolved. We are here to address the criminal part of the homeless population. When individuals that are unsheltered, homeless, transient cross the line and they get into the area of committing illegal acts, the Los Angeles Police Department will take action. I'm sure there are going to be some questions tonight about 4118 A through D. I'll be happy to answer those questions. You may have some 5611 questions, some questions regarding some of the other LAMC, penal code, other codes that affect the homeless situation, 5150 of the Welfare Institution Code. I will be happy to answer any of those questions that you may have regarding that. We did have at one point in the Valley a HOPE detail, homeless outreach and proactive engagement detail. Unfortunately, because of the cutbacks that affected everyone citywide, we had to make some tough choices, and many of those officers returned back to their previous assignments in patrol and other specialized units. We did not, however, walk away from that mission. We still support that mission in various ways, including the recent infusion of overtime to address the ABH housing issue, to make sure that those locations that are now being stood up by the city are safe, as well as they're clean, and they're being supported by not only the LAPD, but they're also being supported by all of the other whole of government, other city entities, to make sure that we have a holistic approach and that we're getting everyone on the team to make things happen. So other than that, I think crime has been covered pretty good between Mariana and Jose, but I do want to throw out a couple of other things regarding the Sherman Oaks area and the San Fernando Valley. Right now in the San Fernando Valley, I will tell you, Sherman Oaks is not having a problem with homicides, but the San Fernando Valley is now up almost 18% in homicides year to date. So that is a serious concern for me. We have seen an increase in violence ever since 2019. The numbers citywide show about a 23% increase in homicides, and that is a concern. But this is the first time in a number of years that the San Fernando Valley has shown this high of an increase at any period in homicides. So we are very seriously addressing the shooting crime. We have seized more guns in so far year to date in the San Fernando Valley. We've actually seized more guns year to date than we did the entire year last year. So we're putting our resources in the right place, and we are trying to get guns off the street. Guns used in crimes is the #1 priority out here in San Fernando Valley, and we're trying to reduce our shootings out here in the San Fernando Valley as well. Shootings citywide are up over 30%, and that is a concern. We are also up out here in the San Fernando Valley in the low 20% range, right about 21.5% range for victims being shot. That is a concern as well. Both of those areas, along with some of our other violent crime valley-wide, are seeing numbers that we have not seen since the 2014-2015 period. So we're looking very closely at those numbers. We are well off of our lows of 2019, and we are working very hard to stop that trend. I will tell you that recently we were given an infusion of overtime for our officers from the city council. We've been putting that money to good use, and we have seen most recently when we concentrate those monies in our violent areas that it is having an immediate impact, and it is starting to get those numbers under control. So we will continue to use those funds throughout the year to get our numbers down and to address mainly violent crime. And certainly we will address those property crimes that have the propensity and possibility to cause a violent encounter. For instance, the knock-knock burglary where someone thinks no one is at home, but then it turns out someone is at home. And those thefts that end up resulting in an altercation where they actually turn into a robbery or grand theft person because violence is visited upon the victim. So we're working those areas. We're working them very closely. We continue to lead the city in crime reduction, but it is going to be a difficult path forward because the San Fernando Valley, much like the rest of the department and the rest of the city, has seen a decrease in resources. We are hiring again now in the academy, and we have 180 cadets in the academy right now. We're starting a class every 28 days. However, those officers will not hit the streets until the very last week of this year because they have to go through the 6-month training cycle. After that, you will see a constant infusion of officers onto the streets. And we are hoping that over the next few years, the total department numbers will increase as we overtake the attrition for officers that are retiring from the hiring spree that we had in the early 90s. So that's kind of in a nutshell what's going on in the Valley. I will be happy to answer any questions you have regarding Sherman Oaks proper specifically, and address any of those issues along with Captain Phil Hearn from Van Nuys. So
Okay,
that's what I have. I'm ready for your questions.
thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to Jay Weissler, who has the list of questions.
Thank you, Chief. It's been a real pleasure to hear from you, and it's always good to have a man with your name in the room where it's happening. So, so it's a real pleasure. And I've got a lot of questions here that I think a lot of people are interested in. You had touched earlier about the homeless situation and mentioned that you can't really arrest our way out of the homeless situation, and it is more of a social problem than a police problem.
Mhm.
So what I'd like to hear from you is, number one, what can you do about the homeless when you get a phone call or somebody in the police department gets a phone call, somebody's sleeping in front of my house on the curb, or what, those kinds of questions.
Mhm.
What can you do? And also, again, touching upon what you said, are there positions that the police have historically presumed to deal with homeless people that you think in today's times would be better off handled by, let's call them civilian employees of the city, social workers, counselors, whatever, those kinds of people? And how do you work together?
Okay, so thanks, Jay. So I want to address something right up front, okay? and that is this. The Los Angeles Police Department has long-standing relationships with a lot of, I mean, when I say organizations, literally back in the 90s, when I was at Hollywood Division, a young sergeant named Beatrice Gamala and I were working on outreach to the homeless, even back then, as the homeless situation started really kicking up in Hollywood Division. I've been in this homeless, unsheltered game for a very long time. I want to make one thing perfectly clear to everyone. The Los Angeles Police Department is by far way ahead of the game when it comes to law enforcement engaging with unsheltered individuals. We have been in this game in excess of my time on this department. We have been very innovative when it comes to people that are having mental health issues. We pioneered the teaming of mental evaluation units where we go out with a clinician and a law enforcement officer. We are one of the only agencies in the nation that has a 24-hour hotline where our officers can call and get immediate advice regarding someone that is unsheltered and suffering from mental illness. 24/7. We never close, all weather, all conditions. And Captain Hearn is very familiar with that because he used to work in that area. Here's the thing. We will never, and we should never be the lead agency in dealing with the unsheltered population. We, however, will always do whatever we can to make our community safer and to assist our NGO partners, our governmental partners, and anyone else that's willing to help out with this problem that is very vexing in the city of Los Angeles. With that being said, we take very seriously our responsibility for addressing the criminal element that preys not only on the sheltered population, but there are criminal elements within the unsheltered population that prey specifically on the unsheltered population. And we will take effective enforcement action and arrest law violators when it comes to that, from everything from murder all the way down to what would be identified as a petty crime like a theft or something like that. So on the criminal side, we will always be involved, and we always have been involved and engaged. On the non-criminal side, we lead with services. We try to get people into a situation where they can go into rehabilitation, where they can go into drug, other drug treatment, where they can go back into conservatorship, where they can go into mental health facilities, our mental health treatment, reunited with their family. We seek those kind of solutions first. Many of you have heard recently that 4118 has been brought back to the city of Los Angeles as an enforcement tool under the Los Angeles Municipal Code. I will say this: you are not going to see street sweeps where people are going to be swept off the streets and swept into county jail. That is not going to happen. What you are going to see is us working with our partners, whether it be Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, whether it be Urban Alchemy, whether it be San Fernando Valley Mental Health Center, whether it be Chrysalis or LA Family Housing, any of these other organizations. We are going to work in conjunction to make sure these individuals don't just get shuffled around and moved out of the way. We're going to make a concerted effort to start getting these people the treatment and services that they need, as a society should. When they violate the law, we will warn and we will facilitate, but ultimately we will eventually move into some enforcement action for those that break the law.
I appreciate that answer. And I appreciate that answer, and I think it's pretty good. But I would like to ask you a real quick one. If I do have somebody sleeping on my lawn and urinating on my lawn, et cetera, and it's driving my family crazy, does it serve any purpose to call the police? Will you respond to that kind of a call? And is there anything you can do?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that one quickly, then I'll turn it over to Phil. If they're on your property and they don't have your permission, they're trespassing, that's a crime, we're going to arrest them. Go ahead, Phil.
Okay.
Also,
Sidewalk.
I would like to add
Sidewalk
for the community, especially who's asking that question. Many times you're speaking of these really significant issues at the dinner table, at the hair salon. You may have children or grandchildren in high school discussing these serious issues, and great comments and ideas are coming, and they don't get to the people who really want to hear these ideas. And Van Nuys, I want to hear your ideas. So I would love to be able to partner with you. I have a community police advisory board, if you're unfamiliar with that, where we talk about these very kinds of issues. I take copious notes. And so my serial number is 27212 at lapd.online. Okay. So if you have some way where you think, oh, why doesn't the government just do this? Why doesn't the police department or Ms. Ramon's office, and why don't they just do this? So give me those ideas. And I don't want you to just email it to me. Send me an email with your email. We'll get a hold of you. We'll bring you into the station or at a place where it's convenient for them, and we can talk about it. Let's talk about those great ideas that you have that we may be able to implement in Van Nuys.
Thank you, Captain. Chief, I have a great question here by one of our members, Leslie Mayo. I love this question because I own a Harley Davidson. And her question is one that I think affects all of us who are enjoying the Sherman Oaks restaurants, that we all love the outdoors eating now that we can have on Ventura Boulevard. But Leslie asks this. She notes that, and I certainly know this as a Harley owner, California law requires that all motor vehicles, including motorcycles, comply with the state laws with regards to sound emissions. It's also illegal to unlawfully modify the exhaust systems of automobiles. Yet there's an incredible increase in the number of cars being driven up and down Ventura Boulevard with modified exhaust systems. With all the noise that comes from driving above the posted speed limit all the time, what can the police do? Are you citing anybody for extra noise? Are you slowing people down? What's going on to make our evening activities a little bit more enjoyable instead of just hearing all this noise when we go out to dinner?
So some of you may have heard about some of the recent street takeover activity and street racing activity. Quite often you'll hear individuals with modified exhaust going to and from those things. So here's what I'll say about that. Valley Traffic Division, which is now under a different chain of command, is now under Traffic Group, and it is under Transportation Services Bureau, which is headed by Deputy Chief Gerald Woodyard. And I'll say this, I work very closely with Gerald. We have the Street Racing Task Force out and about. Many of those noise complaints come from the gathering of groups that are going up and down, not only Ventura Boulevard, but the 101 freeway. Sometimes they use Burbank Boulevard, sometimes they use Oxnard. It just kind of depends. And they're engaging in street takeovers. So street takeovers, when they take over an intersection and then they do, maybe donuts or burnouts, they use some of the longer streets late at night to do street racing and all that stuff. We are actively enforcing that now because we've had a lot of tragedies in the city with individuals speeding and doing street takeovers. Quite recently, some of you may have heard about the unfortunate incident that occurred in the city of Burbank that actually started in the city of Los Angeles, where 3 innocent members of a family were killed by people doing a street takeover. So we do not tolerate that kind of activity. We will cite quite often when we have street takeovers for all kinds of different violations. Modified exhaust would be considered an equipment violation. So we would cite that individual, and then they would be forced to go to a CHP station or a CHP check station to prove that they've brought the vehicle into legal standing. And if they don't do that, then they get a warrant issued on the vehicle that they'll have to clear before they register the vehicle again. In terms of motorcycles specifically, that is not something that we necessarily target, but certainly anyone working Valley traffic, and particularly our motor officers, would have the capability of issuing a citation for that violation.
But so if I get your answer correct, as far as a one-off car driving down the street with a very, very loud exhaust, and it just goes by some restaurant and annoys the heck out of everybody there, an officer is probably never going to stop that car and cite him for having a loud exhaust. Is that correct? Absent a street takeover or something like that.
It doesn't necessarily have to be, but you would be more likely to get stopped by someone that's doing traffic enforcement. A regular patrol officer, it's very rare that they would engage in something like that, but it's not out of the realm, because quite often you need specialized equipment and training to make that justification. Then you have to actually examine the vehicle as well. So there are some parts in there that go into the citation beyond kind of what the public's aware of, because you have to have that expertise when you go in and testify in court as to why you cited someone. If they're at an exhibition of speed, street takeover, et cetera, that moves it up to a higher level, which is a misdemeanor, not an infraction. And then you actually have the capability to do more things. You can actually tow that vehicle and request to have it examined, and it would have to be brought back to street legal status before it's released back to the owner.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And that does happen, by the way, folks, on street takeovers and street racing. That absolutely does happen.
I believe that. I have another question by a local resident, lives near the Buckley School, which is off of Stansbury.
Yep.
Alan Connell is like many of the people in the neighborhood, and not only in those streets surrounding Buckley, but in other similar areas. In a recent year or two, there have been a lot of no right, no left turn signs being posted in local neighborhoods in order to in a greater sense to keep traffic moving, but it has a very deleterious effect on some of the local residents. So Mr. Connell specifically says, in the recent years, intersection turn restriction signs have appeared, allowing me limited access to my home. Most of the bumper-to-bumper traffic is caused by the Valley Vista access to Beverly Glen, not the Buckley School. It can take me 25 minutes from Ventura Boulevard just to arrive at my home. Being a resident since 1985, if I was pulled over by the LAPD for violating a city turn hour limitation, no right turns between 8 and 10 or something, and the officer determined that I'm a resident just trying to maneuver my way back into my house, can we establish some sort of a freedom for the local residents to be able to do that?
Well, so quite literally, Jay, the place to make that argument would be in court. So these laws exist for a reason, and we have a shared responsibility with the Department of Transportation in this area. They do traffic surveys and determine which traffic patterns need relief, which ones need extending, which ones need shortening, et cetera. So that's really a Department of Transportation issue in terms of the signage and traffic flow. We handle the enforcement of the moving violation. Do I think there should be a mulligan for someone that lives in the area, kind of like the parking placard? That would be a legislative issue. But here's the thing. Quite often, these things are put in place because of the local residents. So it would have to be looked at in terms of who's committing the violations. Are they local people? Is it a massive influx of traffic coming in for the businesses? All those things would have to be looked at. And then we have to kind of make a determination, and maybe that would not result in giving a buy to the local resident. Traffic is traffic. Unfortunately, it's based on the volume of cars. And it's really geared towards safety. It's really geared towards making this the safest for everyone, particularly when you're around schools. We have to make sure that it's safe for kids, parents, teachers, et cetera, that are traversing schools. So that is very, very important. Studies have shown that higher speeds lead to more dangerous traffic collisions that result in more injuries. And we're just trying to keep it safe.
All right, thank you. Speaking of traffic patrol officers, at least two of our members, Carmen and Kara, were interested in seeing whether or not there could be more patrol officers in traffic south of Ventura Boulevard, recognizing that more crime really occurs north of the boulevard. It's a larger area and it's more densely populated, I think, probably than south of the boulevard, but there are very seldom patrols south of the boulevard, and they're interested in finding out whether or not we could get more officers patrolling our area.
I'm going to go ahead and let Captain Hearn address that, but we're pretty good about staying south of the boulevard as well, because we're very concerned about the burglary issue. So Phil, you want to go ahead and grab that one as well?
Yes, and actually to the last question too. I would mention that, I'm very much dismayed that the citizen has been inconvenienced by those traffic signs that are out there. But there is an entire process before those things get up. And I would venture to say it was a large amount of your friends and neighbors that invoked this to whatever council member was present at that time, and it went to planning, and then it came into to my seat, whomever was in my seat at that time, to sign off on it. So there is a lot that goes into it. It was just not arbitrary by the city to cause this inconvenience to you and your neighborhood. So yeah, Sherman Oaks is a huge area. It's the biggest area of the Van Nuys division, which is inclusive of Sherman Oaks, Van Nuys, and Valley Glen. But you guys, you have to understand, you enjoy very low crime as articulated by Officer Romo and Officer Saldana. So I don't deploy as many officers down there as I do in the center of the division, where I have the violent crime that the chief spoke of. We have had homicides this year in Van Nuys. You haven't had any in Sherman Oaks, which is a good thing. The burglars that I spoke of are in the northern part of Sherman Oaks. The hills are virtually crime-free, and it is a huge area. Ventura Boulevard, I had a very significant concern about because of violent crime and some of the issues with the bars at night. Over the summer, I was very concerned about it. Didn't happen. Myself, as well as our Valley Traffic Division, we deployed officers at night, very visible. We deployed we call them our community cars. You see them out there with the white BMWs. They're looking very professional and sharp as a visible deterrent. So as far as the number of resources for traffic enforcement along Ventura Boulevard, we have motors, we have regular police officers such as Officer Saldana and Officer Romo, but it is not the huge problem with the violent crime or even the property crime that the rest of the division faces. So you do enjoy that degree of safety. The mall, I would also mention, was a source of concern that you might have increased violence and theft, and that the crime level is way down in the mall. So you're in a very safe place. You do have some annoyances with the traffic and so forth, but we will endeavor to do a better job with that high visibility along Ventura Boulevard.
Terrific. That's great news. Chief, I'd like to ask you, people are always concerned about response time. So if I call because I feel somebody's entering my property and I see somebody, what are we talking about response here? You hear all the time, even more than the rest of us do. I'm calling the police on something and they never showed up, or it took them a half an hour or 45 minutes or 2 hours. So what is the response time when we make various calls?
So I will say this, Valley-wide, this is a big valley. The San Fernando Valley, the Los Angeles city portion of the San Fernando Valley is 1 square mile smaller than the city of Chicago. Chicago has 13,000 police officers. We have 2,000 on a good day. Right now, with our current budget situation, we're down to just over 1,800 officers. That's for nearly 2 million residents spread across 232 square miles. So across, again, 24/7, all weather, all conditions. Whether it's a nice, bright, sunny, wonderful Mediterranean day, or whether it's post-disaster, we're here, and we're here to make it safe. I will say this, we endeavor to try and get to all of our emergency calls within 7 minutes. We are pretty good about that here in the San Fernando Valley. I will say for the Sherman Oaks area, often you encounter traffic issues along Ventura Boulevard, along maybe Burbank, Sepulveda Corridor, Van Nuys, but we're pretty good about getting around here pretty quick. And there are different routes that we can take in an emergency, and there are different approaches we can take. We also have air units, we have undercover units working out here, so we can generally get around pretty quick. I would say it's a safe bet that within 7 minutes, if it's an emergency, especially if it's a life-threatening emergency, someone is going to be there from the department. If it's a major emergency, like something serious happens at the mall or a school or something like that, there will be no shortage of officers, because Van Nuys Division is also the hub of, it used to be the hub of the San Fernando Valley, and the Bureau headquarters used to be there. But there are a lot of different entities that are housed at Van Nuys Division. And we have the ability to move a lot of people quickly to a major incident. For your regular everyday incidents, someone is generally going to be there between 6 to 7 minutes for an emergency call. Okay. For a non-emergency call, we're right around 20 minutes, roughly 20 to 22 minutes. And for a non-emergency routine call, we try to get to those in under an hour. I will say this, for an emergency call, you're typically going to get a pretty robust response in Van Nuys, especially if it's a violent crime. You may quite often just see the first visible officers that get there. But what a lot of the citizens don't often understand is if we have something where a suspect is fled, we actually have black and whites, airships, helicopters, other units looking for the suspect that aren't going to come to be seen and be visible in the area where the crime occurred. Because where the crime occurred is the one place that the suspect is not going to be. So quite often when you're going down the freeway, like you're going down the 101 and you see like a black and white on the on-ramp, and then you go down and on the other side, you see another black and white, and then maybe you see another black and white, it's because they're waiting for the suspect to enter the freeway. Or it's because they wait for the suspect to be seen so that they're in a position to catch up to him in case they go either in a pursuit or they flee on foot. So that's pre-deployment and tactical planning of the officers. So you're not going to see them respond en masse necessarily to the location where the suspect fled. Now, when it comes to a contained incident that's going to require resources, luckily you're smack dab in the middle of the valley. So you can bring in resources from the adjacent divisions if it's an emergency. So you're always going to get a pretty robust response for the Sherman Oaks area and for Van Nuys division in general.
Okay, that's great to know. Along those lines of serious crime, are there any gangs in the Sherman Oaks area? Organized criminal gangs?
Yeah, there's no Sherman Oaks gang. Yeah. Yeah. I will say this, it is not, so just so the group knows, it is not illegal to belong to a gang. And it is not unusual for gang members from other parts of the city to live in Sherman Oaks. And
well, of course, I'm talking about gang activity rather than the association. We're well aware that it's you have no power to do anything about people associating, but is there any criminal gang activity?
There's no homegrown gang in Sherman Oaks. There hasn't been in the time that I've been on the department. Now, the question becomes, is it possible for a gang member from, say, Barrio Van Nuys or a Reseda gang or maybe a Whitsett Avenue gang member to live in Sherman Oaks?
No, we don't let that happen. We don't.
Unfortunately, it happens occasionally. But again, as long as they're not involved in criminal activity, they're not going to be, subject to any enforcement action by the Los Angeles Police Department. If we suspect they're involved in gang activity that's linked to criminality, they absolutely will get our attention, 100%, no matter where they're living. Yes.
Okay. Now, in today's political times, obviously you have a difficult job increasing the size of the police department. We're familiar with the reduction in the budget that happened not very long ago. Have you found out that that's hampered you in any sense? That is the reduction of funds, number one, and number two is I know you would like more officers, as would we. Is there any chance that the LAPD might find the funding to actually get more sworn officers? And if so, roughly how many are you looking for?
So I recently had a lengthy one-on-one meeting with Chief Moore, and as everyone on this call knows, Chief Moore is very, very committed to making sure this valley remains safe. He was the deputy chief here for almost 5 years. He was a commander here. He's had assignments in the valley. He's very, very closely connected to the valley. Oh, and he lives in the valley. So I'm going to say this, folks. I'm going to give 2 pitches now that we've discussed, the chief and I directly on a number of occasions. Number one, we are down just under 600 sworn positions in the Los Angeles Police Department. We are hovering around 9,400 and change. That is not enough officers to police as complex and large a city as the city of Los Angeles. We were at 10,000 for a little bit over a year and a half, and that was not enough. The key to this is this, folks. I'm not asking you to raise a ruckus and make a lot of noise. What I'm asking you to do is let your elected representatives know where you stand on the resources that are allocated to law enforcement. If you feel it's adequate, then you should let your elected representatives know that. Again, keeping in mind, we're down 600 officers, and in the valley, we're down over 100. However, if you feel that maybe we need to put more resources towards law enforcement, you should make that known. And again, I'm going to ask you to make your wishes known to your elected representatives. I'm not going to advocate either way on this call, but I will say this. Obviously, the Los Angeles Police Department can do more with more resources. But we work with the resources that we're given by the city, and the city allocates the resources as they are requested by the constituents. So as a group, maybe the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association needs to make a very clear point to the elected representatives how they feel about more law enforcement or less law enforcement. I will say this, Sherman Oaks has always been a fairly safe community within the San Fernando Valley. I would be willing to bet that if you took the numbers, it would compare very favorably to some of the lowest crime cities in America. My question to you as a group is, do you want it to stay that way? Because it takes resources to keep that momentum. So that's number one. Number two, just to be clear, we do the best we can with the resources that we have and the time that we have. As those resources are stretched more and we take on more responsibilities, it becomes more difficult to provide the same level of service. The time to make these things known is not when things have gone too far afield and the numbers are out of whack. The time to make these things known are before that occurs, because once it occurs, it becomes extremely difficult to make that ground back up. For instance, right now, the city of Los Angeles is approaching a point where for the first time in years, we're going to go into the negative and crime is going to start going up again. We're at a 1.4% decrease. Folks, that's just not good. Even if it happens over the hill, it's not good because criminals travel. They travel by bus, they travel by foot, they travel by car. I would ask that you make it clear to your elected representatives on all levels how you feel about law enforcement. Not only are we meeting the mark in terms of, are we providing the service you're asking for, but are we resourced sufficiently to keep your community safe?
All right, I want to ask you another softball question before I ask you something serious. And I just wondered, you know, in the time of the pandemic, many of us are home much more often than we were than it was previous to the pandemic. And when I hear about some of the crime statistics, burglaries might be down or whatever. I'm wondering whether or not the fact that people are in their homes many more hours than they were before has any effect on residential crime.
Well, if they're telling you that violent crime is down, I'm just going to tell you they're wrong.
Well, violent crime might be, I'm talking about property crime. Violent crime, of course, might even be up because people are around all day long. But,
sure.
But what about property crime?
So property crime, we have a good handle on it here in the San Fernando Valley. We've had challenges regarding stolen vehicles because we can't get people to stop leaving their keys in their cars. That's a whole different story. That's a different meeting that needs to be had. But we have had challenges in property crime as well, where I like to see the numbers stay safely in the double digits in terms of decrease, and we have not had that consistently across all of our divisions. In Sherman Oaks, the numbers are decent, but what I worry about are trends. I tend to look at projecting out the numbers as we get decreases and increases. And what I worry about sometimes, just like this stolen vehicle thing snuck up on us, as people return back to work, back to their daytime commitments, back to traveling from home, and more residences are left empty, I worry about seeing that uptick in burglaries. In addition, I worry about seeing the uptick in burglary, theft from motor vehicles, and catalytic converter thefts.
All right, let me ask you another political question here. One that's been talked about in the papers recently a little bit, and I'm almost surprised you didn't bring it up, but vaccinations. Now, it's been mandated that the LAPD be vaccinated by, I guess, October. I'm not quite sure what the date is, whatever it is. I don't know anybody personally, and amongst my friends, we don't know anybody that is that has any objection at all to the mandate that the first responders, of whom the police are obviously the foremost, should be vaccinated. And I know there's a lawsuit that was filed this past weekend. We all know about that.
Mhm.
And a lot of police officers, for one reason or another, against being vaccinated. Now, not being vaccinated, if they do get sick, is going to have a deleterious effect on taking them off of work, on health insurance premiums, on disability. A lot of expenses go along with, well, I got sick. It's not like you can just turn down the vaccination and say, well, if I get sick, I get sick. No, I, as a taxpayer, have to pay your salary and your benefits. That has an effect on me too. And I have one less officer. Now, what I would like to ask you along these lines are, I know what the mandate is. I know they have a fairly low vaccination rate in the LAPD as compared to the community at large. So what is going to be the final effect of somebody refusing to be vaccinated? It seems to be a little bit up in the air, or at least the media is not giving us any reports of what the council or the police department intend to do in the event that that LAPD officers don't get vaccinated. What's going to happen to them?
Okay, so let me see. Let me start with the lawsuit. Obviously, since it's in litigation, I can't make any comment regarding that lawsuit. Officers are allowed to file a lawsuit as they see fit. They're allowed to file for exemptions, whether it be for religious, medical, or other purposes. That's going to be actually reviewed not by the department, but it will be reviewed by the city medical staff. So this is a city thing. The city will review whether these exemptions will be granted, and they will either approve or deny those requests. The city, as has been shown legally, the city absolutely has the right to require you to be vaccinated. In fact, as I've told many officers, you cannot get hired without showing your vaccination card at your physical, period. That's for every sworn officer that we have. Now, with that said, the other side of that, the flip side of that is many officers feel that they should have the opportunity to express their freedom of choice when it comes to healthcare decisions. However, I will say this, as an employer, the city of Los Angeles may not be able to make you do it as a resident of Los Angeles, but they have every right legally to require you to do it as an employee of the city of Los Angeles, because you have the option to not be employed by the city of Los Angeles. My understanding is the city has no plans on firing the people or terminating the people that are not in compliance on a set date. So whatever date the city government decides is and this is, by the way, the city, not the department. Whatever day they decide is the drop dead deadline, and you can't either come back to work or you have to meet certain requirements, that's going to be a city decision that the department will be forced to comply with, period. In terms of our total numbers, I will say this, they're going in the right direction. We are, I'm pretty sure, teetering right at 60-61% in terms of vaccination status, either full or partial. And I think that number is going to continue because we have vaccination clinics at several divisions every day in the city. And we continue to get officers that are getting vaccinated either with the first or the second dose. So that continues. I think eventually somewhere in the 7,000 to 8,000 and change range, you may start seeing a plateauing of that. And then you'll have officers that are insistent on applying for and waiting out the process for an exemption. I can't say today where those numbers are going to be. I think they're probably pretty close to 60 or north of. So of course, when you get to 66%, you're talking about a 2/3 vaccination, even though it is still not where the public is in terms of total overall vaccination. In addition to that, we've had a number of officers that have had it and recovered. And sadly, we have a number of officers that have been afflicted by COVID-19 and have not recovered and have passed away. So that is a serious concern for the employees in this department. And this is why we impose precautions. One of the proposals is that if you are not vaccinated, that you get tested weekly and you continue to follow the healthcare directives as imposed by the city. That may be a partial solution. I can't really speak for the council and the mayor, but certainly our chief has made it clear, as has the leadership of this department and the leadership of the Protective League. They encourage people to get vaccinated, period. All of the members of the Protective League are vaccinated on the that are directors. Our top staff is almost 100% vaccinated. We are strongly encouraging the members of this department to get vaccinated by whichever vaccination they want to get by their choice. And, I think as we go forward, you'll see those numbers continue to increase. And we will continue to also enforce the rules in terms of vaccination prevention and safety.
I appreciate that. And when you say, I just want to follow that up, and then this is the end of the question.
Jay,
Yes, Richard.
we have time for one more question.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Thank you. I take it from what you've said that you don't really know what's going to happen to officers who do not comply, whether they'll be suspended, fired, or whatever. Do you have a particular approach that you would take in the San Fernando Valley with respect to enforcing the vaccination rules?
Well, I'm not convinced the city knows what they're going to do at this point. They have set an October deadline for employees. When I say employees, I'm going by the city, because this is not a department thing. This is for the entire city of Los Angeles. I don't know what the final decision is going to be in terms of enforcement, but I will say this: the requirement to get vaccinated may ultimately be the last requirement. So in other words, let's just say, for instance, very quickly, let's just say that there are requests made to get exemptions, both medically and religious, for religious beliefs, and the vast majority of those are rejected by the city medical staff. So now let's just say maybe 100 are granted for whatever reason out of the 9,600 officers that we have. So now you have 9,500 or 9,400, I'm sorry. So now you have 9,300 officers that have to comply by date certain. Well, I think what's going to happen there is they'll be notified by the city that they'll either have to comply, or there will be some other requirement that the city will impose that will have to be met by city employees, whether you're fire department, sanitation, Department of Water and Power, it wouldn't matter. We all would have to make that same benchmark at some point. Otherwise, the city will take other action, and I don't profess to know what that action is. Maybe they bifurcate it into, you shall have the vaccination, or you will get tested at certain intervals. I don't honestly know what the final city decision is going to be. As things stand right now, there is a requirement for all city employees beyond the police department to get vaccinated by the October date.
Okay, thank you. Chief, I'd like to thank you so much. And I think we all see why you were given the particular position you were given. You're articulate, you're open, and you express yourself extremely well. So we thank you for giving your time this evening, and hopefully your job won't be any more stressful than it has to be ordinarily. It's been a pleasure to be in the room with you, even on Zoom.
Yeah, thank you. Can I say one last thing? And this is my pitch. This is important.
Yes.
We are always, always, always looking for volunteers. Always. I see Phil smiling over there, because I know there's always a little competition among the 7 commands. We are always looking to increase our volunteer corps. Van Nuys is doing an outstanding job with volunteers. We are looking for more.
How does one volunteer?
All they have to do is contact our community relations office. Every single division has a volunteer coordinator that does nothing but coordinate the volunteer mission.
And that volunteering isn't driving a patrol car. I assume it's working in the station.
Well, there are a number of different programs, and it runs the gamut. You may be patrolling in one of the BMWs that our volunteers drive around in. You may be working in plain clothes in a surveillance detail. You may be on bikes. I came out recently and did the community bike ride around Van Nuys. There are a number of different options. And then if the volunteer thing works out, we're always looking for reserves as well. And we are hiring full-time for sworn.
Okay, Jules, I think is our, we volunteer Jules to be a sworn officer. With that, I'd like to thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And that you attended the meeting and spoke, as Jay said, extremely well about the issues affecting Sherman Oaks and the San Fernando Valley. And for people that are on this Zoom meeting, we will be back the third Wednesday in October. And we look forward to seeing everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Jules, you can ride with me any day.
Thank you.